we now have to do it all again. Yes. Really, for the first time, yes. But it is very much like the story of the airplane. They're testing out the new automatic pilot in the airplane. It's a total automatically computer-controlled flight from Stockholm to San Francisco. And the plane is over the North Pole, and the automatic speaker comes on. There's no pilots on board or anything, you see. It's all automatic now. The people are sitting there. They've been automatically served the food. They're automatically shown a movie. They're automatically relaxing. They have their tranquilizer. And the voice comes on and says, "You are now 30,000 feet above the North Pole. The temperature outside is minus 270 degrees. And there is a storm blowing around the North Pole, as you can see below you, in which, if someone was outside in that, as you were dressed in this airplane, they would not survive for 5 minutes. But this flight is totally automatically computer controlled, and nothing can go wrong. Go wrong, go wrong, go wrong, go wrong." Okay. So much for automaticities. Again, we are called upon as products of Scientology to take a viewpoint of causativeness. The planet, in the situation it is in, cannot be handled by automaticity. It cannot be handled by more lowering of people's awareness so that they will not be aware of the problem. It can't be handled by more drugs and more tranquilizers and more TV telling you that everything's okay, and more telling you in the newspapers, "Let us handle it, it's all cool, no, nothing will happen." More bank accounts, more numbered accounts, more computer control. It cannot be handled that way. It has to be handled by alive beings, thetans, that understand the principles of Scientology and the rights and duties of individuals and thetans in the society. Now, that means, essentially, that the people who can speak now about the fourth dynamic would be those who have some processing and some ethical considerations. We cannot expect a person who is going around and selling drugs, for instance, and trying to make children into idiots by teaching them lies or rewritten history. We cannot expect those people to make decisions for the fourth dynamic. They already have out ethics. But Scientology do have also codes of ethics. And it basically comes down to the principle, the greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics. Now, if you have a fourth dynamic, you have to look at the entire planet and the people upon it, because they are all involved in it. Now, I know Sweden has a wonderful history of research and study about the problems of what is happening in the world, and they've had many solutions to these things. But not all of them have been adopted, and some of them are not really good solutions, as you well know. But right now, the major line of attack on the planet, I would say line of attack, I would say line of development on the planet, is toward a thing called mental control. Now that means that the people who are in power on the planet believe that if they control what you think, then you are totally under control. And in actual fact, that's right. Nothing wrong with that, to believe it. It is true. If you can control what people think, you can control them. The only thing wrong with it is with what intention are you controlling them? What is the purpose of controlling them? Are you going to allow them to get more and more able, more and more spiritually free? Or do you want them to act more and more like a white rat in a little cage? You know, he has his little cage there, but you give him a little thing to run around in, it makes him think he's free. Because he keeps running all day long and he never gets to the end of it. So they also know that if they can give you enough problems with your bank account and your tax man and your job and your salary and your food and your health and all of these things, then you're running around in this little cage. You never think that you're not free. You just think you have a lot of problems and you have to get through these, and then somewhere on the other side we'll expand, yeah? But when you realize that this is not entirely the case, it's not entirely right, somebody is setting this up for you. They're setting it up in different countries of Europe and in different countries around the world, especially in the European and American civilization. I have been researching into this because I was forced into the research by following a data trail. The data trail was, how did the Church of Scientology get suppressed and who did it? That was the data trail. And I found out how it got suppressed and who did it. But I also found out that the guys who did it, or the beings who did it, were not only interested in suppressing Scientology and keeping all the knowledge for themselves and using the power of mental control on civilizations, because you see, Scientologists are the one people who are very difficult to put mental control on. Very difficult to mentally control a Scientologist. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of money, a lot of lawyers. So, anyway, I found out they're not only interested in Scientologists, but other religions as well, political parties, educational institutions, financial institutions. In other words, there was an entire, shall we say, plan to take control of the planet economically, financially, spiritually, and individually on everyone. Now, this is not such a good idea if they don't have any plan for rehabilitating anyone. They don't have any plan for getting anyone more aware, and they don't. What they have a plan of doing is reducing your space and your awareness down to about this big and putting you in a box about that big so that you think you're free. If your awareness is only this big and you're in a box that big, you haven't found the limits of your awareness yet, so as far as you're concerned, you're free. The only thing wrong is this goes totally against the purpose of Scientology, which is to get your awareness expanded out as far as you can expand it. And if you do that, you'll find yourself rapidly running into the walls of these boxes. And I don't know in Sweden how much of a boxes they are putting around people here, but in other countries, they put quite small boxes around them. And if you are anything above grade 0, you run right into them. And in some places, you run into them on Dianetics as well. But let's say grade 0. You start to put out your comm lines, you see? And you put out these comm lines. You say, hey, well, Scientology, yes, it's a very good idea. I'm going to put out my comm lines. I'm going to make a new product here, new industry, new things. I'm going to get in comm with these people over here that are working on health foods and clean atmosphere and so on like this. I'm going to work with these people here. And yes, we're collecting a lot of money here, and we got this. And then all of a sudden, you find out that somebody's against you. And the next thing you know, you're being investigated by the tax people. And the next thing you know, they're tolling your bank account, and you cannot move anymore. You cannot travel. You can't use any money. They're investigating you because one of these people you were talking to is apparently he was on the wrong side of the political fence, or he might be a bad guy, he might be a KGB agent or something. But this is all baloney. You know, hey, that's not true. I want to expand. Try to put my comm line. Well, I'll put some over here to a lawyer and try and get this handled. And the lawyer tells you, no, it's not worth it. Don't fight it. That's City Hall. You can't fight City Hall. No, what you better do is get out of that group and go back to your business. And the business you're in, it says, well, no, we don't want you. We've heard about the scandal you're having in the paper over there, and you're with these crazy people that want a clean environment, and that's against industry. And industry, you know, if they don't have industry, they don't have jobs, and we're all out of work, so it's not good to have a clean environment, even if it is killing us. I mean, somehow it's logical. I don't know. But anyway, all of this is gradually, you get all these losses, and you get pushed down into the little box, and you sit there and watch the television hoping, well, I hope somebody does something about it someday. Now, that's only you run into it on grade 0. And in grade 1, so I would solve the problems of civilization. I got an idea. I don't like all this banking stuff. I'm going to set up a new way where people can have a real stable exchange medium and a currency, and they're going to be able to do free trade and all that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden, blah, 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 blah. And you're in court half your life, you know, and you're wondering, like, what happened here, you know? And the banks are all denying you any credit, and you can't work with them and all that stuff. You went against one of the plans. You went against the plan. Now you're in the box, so on. Needless to say, as you go up the grade chart, ARC, service facsimiles, OWs, of course, in there, and you go up through to clear, and you go up on the OT levels, you find it increasingly difficult to stay in your box. All right? You know, you realize, I mean, you may even find it hard to keep your cat in a box. But imagine these guys trying to weave a whole web of mental control around you so that you stay in your box. Huh? Then you have the idea. Now, there are certain plans that are afoot in Europe to put people in their boxes. One of them is, we have found out, is working this thing through what's called the European Parliament. Huh? Yeah. I understand that Sweden is not in this common market thing and so on like that, but it doesn't matter. This is not a common market. The common market is only the first stage. You ever think of what constitutes a government? What would constitute a world government? Be the same like a state government, right? Or a country government. But you would expect them to come out and say, hey, we want to create a world government. Anybody for it, against it? How about a constitution and all that? You would expect that, but that isn't the way they're doing it. It was failed 2 times like that, one with the League of Nations and one with the United Nations. So now they're doing it a different way. They build the government upside down. Upside down, backwards, backwards. The last thing first and the first thing's last. This is so nobody notices. So the first thing that they put in was the European Common Market, because that is the regulatory body which regulates trade and exchange between the nations. Believe me, they really regulate it. There's a lot of people mad at what they're doing. But one thing they're doing is making agreements with every other nation on Earth and every other trade group on Earth. So they have a connected network of trade. By the statistics in these books, they now control 40% of the world's trade is controlled by the European Common Market. Either passes through its hands in some fashion or another. They are also linked up to the world bankers who control over 40% of the world's money. Now, you know yourself, if somebody controls 40% of the world's money and the world's trade, then they're somebody that most people have to deal with. Most countries have to deal with them. Now that is just what they're promoting. That's what they promote in here. They may control a lot more, okay? Maybe well over 50% by now. Now, once you know these facts, you want to look at what are they going to do next? Well, what they're going to do next, now that they have the actual bureaucracy and administration and the government regulation part in, they're going to put the government on top of it. And the government on top of it is composed of this European Parliament people that meet in this building in Strasbourg, France, right? And there's one member for every 500,000 Europeans. And they intend also to expand Europe to be 21 different countries with a total of 400 million people. That includes Sweden, I think, as well, all the way around to Yugoslavia and all the eastern communist bloc countries. Includes Spain and Portugal, all of those. They already have it all planned out. Now, what they're doing is putting in, this is your assembly or your parliament or your House of Representatives, the lower house of the government. Over on the side of this, they will also have a thing called the European Council, which is your heads of state of the European nations meeting together, like a Senate or a House of Lords or a senior house of the Parliament. However, that's not all. Once they get that done, they now will put a little bit more on the top. And they will put, by election from these people in the Parliament here, they will elect, first they will have a president of the Parliament for 1 year rotating, and then they will have a president of the council over here, like the president of the Senate or the head chairman of the House of Representatives. That will be there. Then they will put in a prime minister. A prime minister and a cabinet. All right? Now, I can read you exactly the statement that says they're going to do that. I mean, I'm not just making this up, right? It says, the prime minister of the Union, that's the European Union, is to be elected by the Parliament of the Union, acting on a proposal from the Council of the Union for the period of the future electoral term, which is 5 years. He is to propose ministers of the Union, that's his cabinet and so on, defense, trade, atomic energy, all that stuff, to the President of the Union for appointment. Now, the President of the Union, of course, is this one-year post that I told you about, is the President of the Council. And the government of the Union is dependent on the confidence of the Parliament of the Union. It may express a constructive vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister of the Union. Votes of no confidence may also be passed on individual ministers. Now, this means the Prime Minister will represent 400 million people, 21 nations, and all of Europe to be the largest power in the world. Larger than the Soviet Union, larger than America, larger than the Third World. It is the biggest, will be the biggest, that's where they plan it. They will be forcing the other smaller powers like America and Russia and so on into agreements. Because you see, they have the power then. If they side with Russia, then they can defeat the United States. If they side with the United States, they can defeat Russia. It's very simple. So they can force them into agreements to come under control as they wish. And they will also set up a banking system where you don't have Swedish kroners anymore. You have a provision for a currency and note issuing bank which is quite independent of the states of the Union, which means your countries, or the institutions of the Union, which means nobody has control over this bank. And this bank will be the ones that control all the currency, just as they do in the United States through the Federal Reserve Bank. In other words, government does not control the money in the United States. They set up an arbitrary independent thing, as we well know what that means. It's like an independent network, like the GEO or something, and you don't have control over it from the org anymore. Well, they set up that in the United States, and they will do it in Europe, and you won't have control of the money either. Now, why am I telling you all this? Well, this is where the trail led, to this plan. Getting rid of Scientology and, by the way, the influence of other religions on the planet. They don't want religions. You understand? That is a competitive group. The Catholics number something like 800 million Catholics on the planet. The Buddhists number something like over 1 billion Buddhists on the planet. Scientologists didn't number too much, but they had very powerful technology. They could find out things. Anyway, those guys are all getting attacked. The Mormons, the Buddhists, the Catholics, everybody was getting attacked. So, why am I telling you this? Because nothing wrong with a one-world government. I've been to lots of planets. Lots of planets in the universe have only one government per planet. I'm sure you've experienced the same in your travels. On a time track or whatever. I mean, many. In fact, that's more usual that they just have one government per planet. Much more usual. In fact, you might even find several planets in a confederation of one government. But here, you have 160 or 70 governments on the planet. We know why that is. It's explained in your sector ops bulletins. It's explained in Revolt in the Stars. You have here the representatives of maybe 160 different planets or races or different cultures or governments on this planet. The Thetans come from those particular areas because this was a dumping ground and it was a place where some catastrophic events happened quite a long time ago. However, to get this all back together is an admirable idea. There's nothing wrong with it, as long as the intention is good, as long as the intention is ethical for survival, as long as the intention is for the increase of awareness and spiritual ability. If the intention is to enslave, if the intention is to depress awareness, if the intention is to put people in these little boxes, then it is not a good idea. As you well know, if you've studied psychology or behavioristic psychology or any of the modern techniques, they all work with rats and mice. All right? And you can understand that they run experiments on rats and mice, you know, and they put them all in cages and they do things with them and so on like that. Now, if we were all rats and mice right now, right, and our fourth dynamic was rats and mice, and the humans were on our fifth dynamic, we wouldn't like that at all. See? So, I do not intend to be a human being or a Thetan that is taking part in somebody's one-world experiment treating other human beings like rats and mice or ants or any small animal that they can experiment with mentally, physically, and through all these various methods. I don't like that at all. In fact, LRH didn't like it either. And one of the things that has come about from this finding, I mean, we found this. This is the trace of the line that came from who suppressed Scientology, went right back to this one world group that's working through this principal party here, the European People's Party. It just happens to be a big political party. They're just the front guys for the conspiracy. But when you come to this, you say, hey, wait a minute. And you look around to see if anybody's doing anything about it. You don't find any. There's a few people protesting it. There's a few people saying, yeah, I don't like that. I'm not going to vote for it. But there's nobody proposing any other game. And what does LRH say? When you end off an old game, you must give them a new game to play, or the game will be getting you. Okay, well, we got a new game on the third dynamic, everybody being the source point for Scientology in its area and following tech and policy. Well, now we have a new game on the fourth dynamic. We don't let the GO or anybody pretend to be able to handle it, because they can't. We know that. They didn't even grasp the hugeness, the immensity of the plan that I've uncovered here, and you can come read about if you want. All right? They didn't even get close. Well, they did get close to it. That's true. They did get close to it. In Germany and Austria, several of the agents of the Guardian Office got close to this plan, and they were immediately excommunicated from the church by the infiltrated MI6 FBI agent Alan Hubbard. That was in 1978. I did not find them until just last year, and they told me, hey, you found out the same thing we were working on. So they did start to find it, but the guys got shot, They couldn't get the data. They tried the same thing, get the data up to LRH, get the data to Mary Sue. Well, they didn't get it there. But now we have all the data. See, we have it all. It's nothing we don't know about their plan to take over and put in a total one-world dominated slave government on this planet. Believe me, it is mental enslavement. They don't want you to think you're anything but an animal. All of your thoughts will be monitored from childhood and controlled by the idea that you're an animal. Your children will be taught they're animals. Yeah, that's what they want to do. And they want to further ensure that they have electronic control over your thoughts by putting in radiation and beams that control your actual thinking. To say nothing of the experiments going on in the United States, where they're talking about implanting small chips, very small chips the size of a pinhead, in a person's head area or in his chest at birth, so they can monitor him for the rest of his life. This is already being proposed to the United States government, and they're doing a whole project of experiments with this. I'm sorry to say that spiritual advancement and psychic development, development of theta abilities, has become a state secret in the United States. It has become a state secret in Russia. It's become a state secret in most advanced countries. Quote, advanced. They're not really advanced. But why is it a secret? Because it's a weapon. Just like the atomic bomb was put behind the shades of night into the government arena, and nobody could know about the atomic bomb in the 50s, nobody can know about psychic development now. It's the top secret stuff going on behind the scenes. And that isn't only theta ability. They're not talking about that. They're talking about mind control, intention beams, ways to control your thought, small electrode implantation in the person or in the TV or in the automobile, or various ways. Keep you all on a national computer scheme. Okay. Now those are the coming things they are using for weapons of war. In a way, this reminds us all, of course, of the often run into on the track. I'm sure you have run into the guys called the thought police. They always say they're the thought police and they're controlling your thoughts, and you better not do anything against the government or we'll implant you or something. And you always find out sooner or later that the thought police really were guys of no particular ability, except that they had some very clever microcircuitry that they either implanted on you or in your telephone or your car or with your friends or whatever, and they heard everything you were saying, or they had a whole network of spies around and they heard what you were saying. So they pretended to know your thoughts all the time. The thing is, to know everybody's thoughts, you'd have to have an auditor for every citizen on the planet in session with them 8 hours a day, right? And if they did that, hell, we could clear the planet very quickly. So they can't do it that way. In other words, don't worry about people knowing your thoughts, because, they would have to have auditors and incredible computers to take all the session data in every day. And then they'd have to know rudiments to clean up the guy the next day, and they'd have to do something with him sooner or later. The guy would ARC break and leave the session. So they might have to just put in the bridge, you see, so they won't do it that way. They don't really want to know your thoughts. They don't really want to know them. All they want to know is that you're doing what they say, and your actions are controlled. Okay, sorry to make it so blunt, but that is what's happening in the world, and it's going on very quietly behind the scenes. I found out that these secret studies into psychic events and psychic warfare and all that is a phenomenon that is receiving increasing notoriety in the newspapers and so on. You get a little bits, pieces of it, but never very much. They're way far ahead of anything you see put out into papers. We know, for instance, that the Russians are using telepathic control on their spy lines right now. They are running agents over hundreds of miles distance by telepathic control. In other words, they send their messages back and forth telepathically, and nobody can intercept them except another telepath. How do I know that? Because when I was over in Germany, I picked up a few of them going by. I said, hey, who's that? You know, I mean, you're used to having Ron talk to you, or maybe another Scientologist say, hey, man, I'm coming over, you know. Okay, man, I'll go down and open the door. And he's there, you know. That happens all the time with Scientologists. But I had this weird feeling, you know, just getting up in the morning and Agent Cherinkov, report to Mossadegh and go to Station B2. Agent Cherinkov, repeat, go to... It's coming through as a thought. What the hell is that? Picked it up as a line. It's coming out of East Germany and going to Africa. Right? It was a Russian thought message. So, anyway, believe it or not, if you want to go over to Germany, you can try and pick up a few yourself. But we have it from another source. I told that to a few people, and they said, ah, yeah, maybe so. However, I then, before I told anybody about that in England, we have another friend over there who was also interested, and he had a friend in the intelligence service. And he said, the guy was interested a bit in Scientology because of the stuff we were working on. And he said that his friend told him the other day that the Russians were already using telepathy in their spy work. And then this guy came, hey, did you know the Russians were already using telepathy in their spy work? I said, as a matter of fact, I did. Yes, I did. I picked up some of the stuff they were practicing with over there in Germany. Oh. Well, anyway, he thought it was going to be big news to me, you see. But I just happened to be on the line. But anyway, the funny thing about this is, the funniest thing about all of this is, do you see how valuable Scientologists are going to be in the new civilization? They're going to be the only people that know what's happening. You're going to be the only people on the planet that really understands what's happening. Because you can pick up the telepathic comms. You can understand when the government's lying to you, when they're telling you the truth, the overt motivator sequence, the appearance of people trying to withhold, all of that thing. And as you audit many, many hours, you will realize that it's very easy to pick up what people are really thinking if you want to. And you can also pick up emotions and various things. Well, from Dianetics, you can learn that very easily. And you can pick up the whole thing, mental image pictures and everything like that. And the next thing you know, if you put your attention on it, you'll find out whatever you want. If you put your attention on your own file, for instance, your own file in the government files in Stockholm or whatever country you're from, it will come to you where that file is. And not only that, but you'll start to get a feeling of what's in it, and not only that, pretty soon you will be able to see exactly what's in it. Not only that, but you'll find out who the agents are that take care of your file. And not only that, but you'll find out what's happening with your friends who are also filed next to you. You understand what I'm saying? It's OT abilities are OT abilities. And what it is, the governments of the world are afraid of us. You see? Why do you think they're spending so much money trying to wipe out the squirrels? The squirrels aren't under control. The squirrels can find out anything. I know I wouldn't, if we were doing something here and one of you guys started playing, you know, like running yoga into your sessions or something, or drug therapy or something like that into your auditing sessions, we wouldn't spend thousands of dollars on lawyers and private detectives and all that stuff. We just quit sending people to you. Doesn't take much, just, okay. That's it. You want to play that game? Go away. Just maybe put a little article in the magazine, say, look, don't go to this guy, squirrel. We know it won't work. Well, why are these guys spending millions? And believe me, they do spend millions to stomp out the squirrels. Because the governments behind them, and not only the governments, but the one-worlder guys behind them, are afraid of us. Don't ever believe anything else. They're afraid of us. right? That's where it's at. Now that's your fourth dynamic game level. We are the people who are responsible to the rest of humanity to, one, get them on the bridge, two, to sort of hack them on what the mental war is all about, and three, to give them another game to play. And the other game is called the New Civilization game. And that's, I think it's printed up in Swedish, but it has several purposes which everyone can agree are good for survival. And those purposes are things like, well, let's clean up the planet. It's our house, you know, let's clean it up a little bit, knock out the pollution, get the food good and water pure. And let's have a stable medium of exchange. Let's don't have rates of money going up and down and all. Let's get a stable currency here. Let's get a stable medium of exchange. We've already got one, by the way. It's called the Galactic Credit, and it's going to be based on metal of value, like gold, silver, platinum, that kind of thing, but it's also going to be underwritten by the auditing intensive, standard auditing intensive. Therefore, it will be standard. That's wherever you get a standard auditing intensive, this thing will be good. And it can always be turned in for that amount. And it will be roughly what they're charging for a standard auditing intensive in the free zone. So, yeah. Now, I didn't bring it with me, but I have color pictures of these things. We'll first issue them out as printed as a credit note on one side and what it's all about, and on the back we'll have the conditions of where you can turn it in, what free zone place you can get your various payment and so on. It'll be, first of all, it'll be a bond type issue. In other words, you're buying an investment in some OT project or something, and you can always get auditing for it, or within a year or so you can get gold or silver or whatever we have at that time. So this will start them out as investment issues, but they will eventually become currency in the planet because they're so stable. They won't hardly value. They won't vary with inflation or depression. They'll be the same. The same value can be gotten from these things. Well, that's another thing we need on the planet. Another thing we need is an appreciation more of culture and artistic and endeavors, right? People, there's so many artists and so many musicians are giving bum education out there. They don't even know the definition of art. They don't even, they're being patronized by people that want them to produce bank art. You know, it's all just stuff from the bank. You know, we went to an exposition in Paris recently. Myself and I went in there, and who was it, the Pompidou Museum or something like that. And I mean, you had to hold your nose around some of the art, not because it, you know, figuratively, but physically it stunk, right? They were making the sculptures out of old tennis shoes and socks and trash and things pulled out of the backyard, and they just pasted it all on a board, you know, as all mass junk crap stuff, you know, and then put some paint on it like that. Ketchup bottles, you know, and open food, no banana skins. You actually had to hold your nose as you went through there. That was modern art, right? And we said, yeah, it's bank. It's just people's trash. You know, it's real trash. And here it was displayed in this fantastic building, you know. Wow. Wouldn't it be nicer to have some real OT art in there, you know, some guy, you know, from Fantastic Vision, from exterior, or some outer space scene or something, you know, even the beauties of the planet. Something more aesthetic and more theta than that. My God. So anyway, that's another thing that's needed. Another thing that is needed is communication and coordination between peoples. And we're working on this project in the fourth dynamic to try and get more and more of the free zone people connected up with like computer links and all that. We're also working on inventions that will improve the lot of mankind, which mean things that can power your computer without depending on electricity. So you can power it from sunlight, so you're not dependent on any electrical system run by the government. It can turn you off. You can still maintain your comm line, bounce it off a satellite, whatever. We want to put up our own satellites, for instance. We have a company that's on a way involved with something like that, and if they come out with some money, well, we can put up our own. We have several ideas that some of them, I admit, have come off the track, and many Scientologists remember things. Can't help that. That's one of the plus points of auditing. You may remember something that's a very valuable invention or something run out and get a patent on it on this planet and go with it. And there's many other things that are needed to make a new civilization happen here, right? And there are things to be avoided. In other words, things that you should agree with, should not agree with, that will lead into the little white mice in the cage thing. You understand? Like voting for things that allow babies to be implanted with a little electrode at birth, or you know, the free use of drugs on everybody, and so on like this. It's like you have to know the game. You have to know what the alternative is. You have to know to be able to make a choice. And then we come to the final thing. To be able to make a choice, people have to have a datum of comparable magnitude. Yeah? You can't make a choice between a one-world mind control government and nothing. Although they're trying to make you decide between that or atomic war. You see, because they're putting the horror of atomic war over here. If we don't do this, you're going to have atomic war. No, they won't. It's not it. That's false. They're trying to make you decide between atomic war and one-world government. That is not the decision. The decision is between a one-world government that treats you like mice, or a new civilization where everybody's freely communicating and coordinating, just like we do in the third dynamic. And you can still be your own country, you can still be your own city, you can still be your own group. You don't have to have everybody under the same control to prevent war. War is an aberration. It is. All right? Just like you don't have to have all Scientologists under control to keep ethics in. You don't have to have them all put in a cage to have ethics in, because most people are ethical, all except about 2%. That's the figures. See, we know these datums. We know these datums. So, who's going to be there to make the decisions between a new civilization and a mind control civilization? Well, we have to be there. We have to instruct people. We have to let them know there is an alternative. We have to let them know that they have a choice, not only on this planet for their own survival and their own expansion, but very soon they're going to be linked up to intergalactic civilization. And that is another thing which I know you all have been waiting for. And you may have some back pay, do you, in some organization out there? You may have an old home or an old hunting ground you like to go and see. But it is true, very soon there will be a link up again with the old galactic civilizations. Now, it's not just because I say so, because we found out that these guys are also planning a link up. They're planning a link up on the basis that it would be better if everybody joined this one particular group operating in nearby space. If they would join that one particular group because they are of the same agreement. They like implanting and they like to keep people under control. So if Earth comes to the awareness in a few years that there is another civilization out there, and hey, look at that, wow, it's the only one we know about, again they'll be faced with a choice for which they have no comparable magnitude datum. They have no datum to compare. So they say, oh, look at that, hey, these guys out there, they have airplanes, wow, they wear clothes just like they do in New York City, wow, look at that, and they have spaceships, and wow, and they say they'll help us, and wow, we ought to have trade with them, and oh, they're very good. They want to actually get in a big agreement with us and have our world government join up with theirs. Oh, fantastic, you know, that would really, great, Funny thing is, the guys are not, you know, when you really look at them, they're not very friendly. They look a bit, theta-wise, they look a bit dark. But who's going to notice that if there isn't any Scientologist around to say, hey, look, that's Markabian. Those fuckers are implanters. You don't want to mess around with them. So unless we're there to say, hey, look, there's at least, I mean, just in the near space here, you know, there's at least 100 different systems and races around. I mean, if you don't believe so, look at the planet here. Look at the planet, how many races and so on there around. So there's also the same duplication out there, because that's where they usually came from in the beginning. You see? And we know, for instance, the Japanese have been working for centuries now, and especially since World War II, to be able to get back to their own home civilization, where as you might expect. They have a civilization very similar to modern-day Japan and very similar to the beliefs and customs of working together as an enormous third dynamic, you know, production and all this industry and all, and they want to go back there. They're just waiting to get the okay to do space travel, and they're going to take off. We know that. We've had it verified from them as well. They're totally interested in the new civilization. So there's another one right there. I mean, and to tell you the truth, I mean, instead of having a nice implant put in your head or something when you're born, I think I would much rather have my back walked on by a geisha girl, you know? So if we got a choice, I mean, just between those two, I already know what I would choose, you know? And I don't even know any Japanese very well, you know? But I already know that's better. I mean, even though maybe we would have to, you know, like slant our eyes a little bit and put the hair down and say, so. But so what? That's better than running around with an electrode in your brain and every time, you know, and not being able to expand. And if you have an idea, you get it cut and suppressed. Oh, no way. Those guys are expanding. Okay, well, that's just another one. Well, there's a lot more than that. And, of course, there's the best idea of all. Just like we're doing in the Freezone, sometimes called the independent Scientology movement. Why don't we just remain independent and be a Freezone planet? Yeah. Now, that's the best idea, see? Then we can make trade arrangements with whoever we wish. From the fourth dynamic here to the fourth dynamic wherever. If people want to go visit their homes, their old homes and ancestral homes and so on, they can do that. But if you're a citizen of this planet, you're a free zone planet. And then you know what happens to free trade centers, don't you? You know what happens to places like used to be Gibraltar and Las Palmas and places that are free trade ports, right? You get a lot of business. Lots of business. Lots of buying, selling, industry, prosperity, so on like that, right? Lots of tourists, all kinds of things. So I kind of like that idea because Earth has been out of calm with these guys for a long time because of its problem, you know, aberration. This is a very aberrated place. And but it's going to be back in calm with them soon, so we might as well make it a sort of a festive, joyful occasion and celebrate it like, hey, you know, this is a free zone planet. You guys can come here, visit, bring your money. Bring your gold, you know, and your valuable things from the other planets and trade them here. We'll give you something like maybe 25-hour intensives and, you know, handmade special art from the planet, you know, and so on. Well, good. But we can set up a really good deal here. And the next thing you know, we'll all be running around in spaceships, you know. We have our own space yachts because these guys want to trade. They want something. And what they want is, of course, is good technology. Because this had to be the proving ground for the technology right here on planet Earth. This was the worst operated area, and it had to be here. As you well know, I mean, look at the place. I mean, just the fact that it has 190 governments on it. I mean, you have wars going on every day. I mean, you know it's a very aberrated place. The Statens are basically good. Well, if they're basically good, we must have all the bad ones here, you know? Or if there's any little chance of them being bad, we must have most of them here. No, it's not that. It's just they've been implanted, they've been aberrated, they've been, you know, had a little more knocking around than most other Thetans. But it can all come right. It can all come right if we do the third dynamic game in together with the fourth dynamic game. And let people know, hey, look, it's going to be a chance when you come up to decide between mental slavery and a free zone planet. There is no atomic war there. That's off the schedule. Nobody's going to be allowed to do that anyway. So that is totally outlawed in this sector. Don't have to worry about it. Somebody might try it, but they're not going to get any agreement. It's not going to be wholesale atomic war or biological or chemical war. What there will be is a gradual enslavement of peoples toward a mental control where they are forced to decide to join up with these guys here called Markavians. And if we don't get in there and say, hey, look, that isn't going to be the only alternative you have. There's plenty of other people. You're going to either join up with the Japanese you know, or the Muslims, or you can join up with the guys the Buddhists go back to, or you can join up with the guys that the Polynesians go back to, because there's a big sea planet up there that they like. There's a lot of water and so on like that. Take the canoes for a long time and, you know, eat off the trees. And there's a whole planet for that. But you can join up with any of those guys, but my God, you know, let's just don't join up with guys that want to just crunch you down further. Because you have the 1-2 punch that will handle this planet in the future, and that 1-2, of course, is your third dynamic with Scientology tech, your fourth dynamic with the new civilization. And once you know all that, you know everything there that is necessary to know for your survival in the coming next 10, 20 years. I mean, that's what we've been able to uncover by using the data series and using the investigatory tech of HCO applied to the situation of who's attacking the church and why. You understand? And when we came out, that's what the data showed us. That's what it was. It was evaluated. It's been verified now about 5 different times by 5 different people that were also in the data series and didn't believe my evaluation. And they did it, and they can't come to any other conclusion because that's where the data leads them. So anyway, we're going along that line, and we give you the data free, and the idea is because we need resources to handle. We need Scientologists, people who are free, thinking clearly, understand policy and tech, can be able to advise the fourth dynamic, can be able to see where it's going, and tell people, hey, wait a minute, no, you don't want to vote for that law, you know, you don't want to vote for that law about the little chip. No, it's very, I know it's confusing and all, it sounds like a good thing, but don't vote for the law that says about the little chip. No, you didn't get it. No. It says, no, it didn't say what you thought it said. You thought it said it was going to help you get better food at the supermarket, but it didn't say that at all. It said intracoastal biological implantation. Yeah, but you didn't understand that, did you? No. What they mean by that is they're going to put an electrode in your chest, right here, above your heart, right? And if you get out of line, they put a pain signal through it and you have a heart attack. Oh, really? I thought it meant that they were going to irradiate the milk so that my baby would be healthier. No, they were going to put the electrode there, right there, you see? If that law passes, bye-bye. Oh, well, now I understand it, okay. You see, people have so many misunderstoods today, right? Very many misunderstoods. They don't even understand what a thetan is. And that's the first one. They don't even understand they are a thetan. Well, that shows that we need some more PE courses around here, personal efficiency courses and basic course lectures. Well, that will come. That will come. But now we know how to handle it. Anyway, it wasn't handled before. We now know what the game is. Spread the news as far as fast as you want. Write it up. Copy what I've written. I don't care. Just get it out there, and let's have a future for this planet that makes it into a free zone planet where it determines its own destiny, not a destiny that's determined for it by a bunch of suppressive individuals that just want to totally control it. And I think that all of you are for that purpose which I just stated on the new civilization and for keeping it a free zone planet. Because you're here, because you're Scientologists, and you got in Scientologists because you're who you are. Why aren't a lot of other people here? Because you are here, and you're the people that got into it, all right? And I am too. I'm like that too. I got into it because I felt responsible. And I felt responsible for more than I could say at the moment. I couldn't get anybody to listen. But finally, after getting a lot of auditing, I realized what I was being responsible for. And that's not only me, not only different dynamics, but also the future. The future of the planet. You realize that? If we don't take responsibility for the future of the planet, we won't have any planet in the future to which we can come back to safely, which you can pick up another body in, to which your children can live safely. You put the future there. You have to put it there. There are not many people doing it, I can guarantee you. The only ones that are Scientologist people and a few little power groups that are trying to take over control. And the reason they're trying to put it there is so that they can control you and all the rest. And the reason they're putting it there the way they are, and the reason you can spot them there doing this, these guys at the top of these guys, not the political guys, but up at the top, the World Bank level, Basel, the 13, the 3, the secret guys in the little group, which a lot of people have heard about in different ways. They think it's a secret society. They think it's this. It's none of those things. It's just a group of a few Markabian individuals, Thetans, that know, they absolutely know that they're Thetans, and they know that they are picking up bodies down the time track, and they're pushing their scenario to get the Earth under control. And they know this, and they keep it a secret from everyone else, except us. So really, when it comes right down to it, there's only two groups on the planet. There's the Freezoners, the Scientologists, and there's the Markabian one-worlders. It's really, you can just break it down to those two categories. And then in that, you look for allies, and you look for people who are not enemies, but they're on the other side. And you use the allies, and you say, okay, you guys are against the same thing we're against. This is the alternative, the new civilization. Hey, I like that. Let's do it. Right. The other guys, you say, hey, you guys, you're being fooled, because they all are, by the way. There's so many secrets on the other side that they fooled everyone down below a certain level. And you can guarantee if you go in there and say, you're being betrayed, at the end of this, you're going to end up being taken over, you're going to end up being implanted, you're going to end up all of this stuff. They will go, wait a minute, maybe you're right. Or they're the people that are trying to take over from those guys, and they will be betrayed too, because they're letting them, they're allowing them to come along with their power groups and so on into the top, and then they just snip off the top and they have the group. It's old politics, but these guys are good at playing it because the Markabians are playing it from a theta game level. And the only people on the planet capable of playing it back at them that way are Scientologists. So that more or less explains what the game is, why they were interested in taking Scientology over, and why they're so interested in spending millions of dollars to wipe out the free zone. In other words, we are the hope for the future of the planet, just because we have the knowledge, and we have the tech, and we have the policy. The more people that take that responsibility, the easier it's going to be. And I don't know about you, but I decided to take it when I joined Scientology, but especially after all this troubles happened in the church. And I said, well, to tell you the truth, you can have a first dynamic reason for taking it too, taking responsibility. I told you before in the other lecture, not all of the auditing you do is done in the auditing room. Some of the auditing you do is right outside, yeah. Third and fourth dynamic stuff. Well, you can also have, if for no other reason, you can do it for case gain. Because you will get case gain from doing it. I can't tell you in the last 2 years how much case gain I've had from doing this particular auditing process on the third and fourth dynamic. Things that were fearsome, things that were horrible, things that hell, I need $1 million to handle that. Things that I thought I couldn't handle. I went and just confronted them with that intention of handling on the third and fourth dynamic, and they just went. There wasn't anything there. All they were was the things that I had not confronted on my way down the spiral. And I just went back and confronted them on the way up. And now, very easy, very easy. All right? None of the mental control devices they have developed on the planet can affect anyone of Scientology that understands the game on the third and fourth dynamic and has good TRs. If you do not believe the game of what is going on, well, then you are not looking at the truth. I'm sorry. And you can be affected by those things. Because if you don't believe they're there, and they are there, and they're pushing in on your case, or your bank, or your theta beingness, or your body, they can affect it. Believe me, they're just as there as a car running down the street. And if you walk across the street, even though you don't see the car and it hits you, you'll know it. The same way with these beams and telepathic devices they've invented and the amplifiers and all this stuff you read about in the bulletins, right? They are there. We have some of our own scientists researching on ways to counter them and jam them and shut them off and so on. And we've been very successful at that. But in the meantime, if you understand they are there and you have good TRs, they won't affect you because you can spot what it is coming in. And you say, ah, that's not from me, that's from over there. That's it, finished. Send it back to Basel, stick it in the tower, whatever you want to do. Anyway, it's a game that we can play because that's a seventh dynamic game. See, that's not fourth, that's seventh. So, yep, 7, 8, 7. All right, that's seventh dynamic game. Handling telepathic things, mental rays, mental beams, and so on like that. Who can play a seventh dynamic game on this planet? Scientologists, yes. Buddhists, a few, yes. A few other spiritual people that have managed to get up there without doing their grades, keyed out for a little while. But not many others, I'm sorry to say. Just the Markavians and mostly the Scientologists. So we have another responsibility to get this across to people on the planet aesthetically as well. Because I can talk to you like this, but you can't go out in the street and talk to people like that. Because, first of all, their reality is not high enough. Now I'm doing it, I don't hope I'm not exceeding your reality, but I always feel in an emergency like this, if you're drifting along in a ship toward the rocks, then you ought to yell out to the crew, hey, we're drifting into the rocks. I don't care if this breaks your reality, but get the hell out here now and let's handle it. Right? And that's the kind of situation it is on the fourth dynamic, because these elections for these guys right now is on 17th of June, and they'll be sticking in this prime minister guy and all their political scenarios in the next few months. They have a 7-year plan, which is laid out in Sector Ops Bulletin number 19, if you haven't read it. That plan is going along totally as predicted. It was predicted or as found out. We found it out and predicted little parts of it. And we put it in February, and all the intelligence data we're getting back from everywhere in the world, from different sources, different lines that are totally from everything from press, radio, newspaper, intelligence agencies, Scientologists, people who work in the place, other people, just strangers on the street. It's going along exactly on that schedule. 100% exactly. In fact, they're even rushing to make sure that they don't go behind on that schedule. Now, I bet you somebody's going to come around and say, tomorrow they're going to come around and say, the reason they're doing that is because you put it out in Sector Ops Bulletin. They took that scenario and they're running it. No, they were already running it a long time. They were running it a long time, and we just predicted this one, because we had to uncover the one they did on the church. So by uncovering the one they did on the church, we learned all about how they do them. It's very simple. Now, on the aesthetic level, we want to get agreement. A good way to get agreement is by aesthetics, art, music, and so on. And I've written a symphony, the New Civilization Symphony in B-flat, and it's music, you understand. I want to get that played by symphony orchestra and put across some messages to the population. But I just want to read you one thing here. I have a little description of every movement. And to end off, I just want to read one thing here. This is from, first of all, it covers, I'll just tell you what it covers first. It covers the old civilization, the alternative, which I've just told you about, the new civilization game. East meets West, because we must have a bringing together of the Eastern spiritual ideas and the Western technological ideas. I mean, we know them. We know there is spiritual matters. We know there are technological matters. But the meeting has occurred in Scientology, right? Many of you were probably Buddhists before. But the meeting of East and West has occurred in Scientology. LRH made it happen with the E-meter connected with auditing, theta stuff connected with physical electronics. And he did it. He brought it together. But it hasn't been done in the fourth dynamic yet. We're hoping to do that between Japan and some Buddhists and some guys over on this side. Okay, so that's east meets west. And then another one is called the awakening, where people cognize, hey, wait, I'm more than messed, I'm more than a body, you know? And the other guys cognize, hey, the reason we haven't got so far in 2,000 or 3,000 years is we haven't been using some tech, you know, some technological things. So both sides can cognite, and they can cognite there's a purpose for the planet. And then the next one is International City, which is, of course, LRH's plan for world peace, written in 1963, I believe, and he has a part in there called International City, where it's a whole plan for the governments of Earth to meet a certain place in a city built in the middle of the Sahara Desert, well, not in the middle, but toward the coast, which is the site of the old capital city of this planet. Great plan, you should read it. We have it on our computer. Maybe we'll get that out if we get some money to publish it. That's one thing. Then the next is attainment. Attainment, which means that people, when they get on purpose, they can attain what they want. And they will attain their purposes and their goals and all their dynamics. The next is peace and prosperity, because when people are attaining their exchange and everything is in, they will get peace and they will get prosperity. And the last one is called ad astra, which means, of course, to the stars. And this is the one, I'll just read you this a little bit to end off. It says, ad astra, to the stars, the harnessed, aligned, and channeled energy of Earth's new civilization is put to use to expand starward. New civilization ideas and inventions have been encouraged, and the barriers of space travel have been overcome. This movement tells of the journey to the stars with the firm hope and confidence of all mankind. Firm confidence of all mankind supporting it. You are invited along musically as the great ship lifts off, enters free space, and makes its course corrections. The voyagers first experience wonderment of the vast beauties of space, coupled with the nostalgic memories of their beloved home planet. Then comes the awaited discovery and communication with another civilization far from the solar system, and the joy at finding it to be of similar purposes and aims as the new civilization of Earth. On landing, the power is shut down, and then in the finale, the two civilizations unite to express their friendship and to align their futures for the greatest good of both. So we have a fourth dynamic game. It's called New Civilization. And we have a third dynamic game. It's called Freezone Scientology. And again, I want to thank Ron for this, because without that, I wouldn't be able to play the game myself. I would have been probably killed in a motorcycle accident 30 years ago. So I'm sure you all have similar reasons for being here and not being somewhere else at this time. But thanks to all of this, we can start doing our auditing out there, not just in the auditing room. We come out of the auditing room, we come into the society, we come into the groups, we come to the third and fourth dynamic, all the way up to the seventh dynamic, mind you, and eighth and ninth and 10th. And we come out there and do our auditing out there. Think what an effect that will create. Yeah, and think back what it says in the factors. Highest purpose in the universe, the creation of an effect. So, all I can say is, if you're going to create an effect on this part of the spiral, make sure it's an ethical effect, because you'll be keeping on going up. All right? And if you create an unethical effect, you go down. But believe me, I think a lot of you will support me in this opinion. Now, this is totally an opinion. But in my auditing and looking at track, I think, now, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think most of the unethical effects that could have been created were already created. Most of the unethical and out-ethical things, I've seen them. I've run into it. Now it's time, hey, you want to create a big effect while everybody's way down here. The big effect you can create is an ethical effect, one that guarantees more survival. Ooh, that's big. All right? So you want to create an effect. Let's put a new civilization here. Let's put a free zone planet here. Are you with it? Aye, aye? Good, thank you. All right.